So many salespeople are losing deals and they don't know why. I looked at the data from over 10,000 sales conversations, and the number one reason that people didn't buy had nothing to do with price, nothing to do with features or competition. It was something invisible, something happening inside the buyer's brain. And once I show you what it is, you'll never pitch the same way again. Let's talk about the real reason that you keep losing sales. You could have the best product in the world. You could have the perfect pitch and still lose if you don't understand what's going on inside your buyer's head. Most salespeople talk about features. They talk about benefits. They talk about ROI. But buyers don't make decisions based on logic alone. They make decisions based on feelings, specifically fear. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of wasting money. Fear of looking dumb in front of their boss. If you ignore that fear, you'll keep losing deals that you should be winning. So, what will this video do for you? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the sales psychology behind why people buy, and more importantly, why they don't. You'll learn the mental triggers that top salespeople use to turn a maybe into a yes. By the end of this video, you'll have a simple system that you can use in your very next conversation to close more deals, reduce buyer hesitation, and build the kind of trust that makes people want to buy from you again and again and again. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that people don't buy what they need. They buy what they feel safe choosing. What if I told you that logic kills sales? Let me tell you about a guy who sold insurance. He had the best rates in the market. He had more coverage options than anyone else. He had the data. He had the charts. He had a great PowerPoint presentation. And he kept losing to a competitor who charged more. And so finally, he asked one of his lost prospects, why didn't you buy? Why didn't you go with me? Like, what was it? What was the reason that you didn't buy from me? And the answer hit him hard. The prospect said, honestly, I just trusted the other guy more. That's the lesson. People don't buy the best product. They buy from the person who makes them feel the safest. You see, safety means different things to different people. For some buyers, safety means different things to different people. For some buyers, safety means social proof. Other people choose this, so it must be okay. For others, it means certainty. I know exactly what I'm getting. And for others, it means belonging. This is what people like me do. So your job in a sales conversation is not just to present information. Your job is to make the buyer feel like saying yes is the safe, smartest, obvious choice. And so the takeaway is, before you pitch, ask yourself, does this person feel safe enough to say yes? And if not, slow down and build more trust before you go to the close. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about is how the brain is wired to avoid loss way more than it wants to gain something. See, losing $100 hurts twice as much as winning $100 feels good. I'll say it again. Losing $100 hurts twice as much as winning $100 feels good. And your buyers are wired the same way. A researcher named Daniel Kahneman spent decades studying how people make decisions. And what he found changed everything. He discovered that the pain of losing something is twice as powerful as the joy of gaining something of equal value. It can be the same thing, equal value, and it's much more painful to lose than it is to gain something. This is called loss aversion. And it keeps happening in every sales conversation that you have. Think about it. When a buyer says, I need to think about it, they're not thinking about what they'll gain if they say yes, but they're actually thinking about what they might lose if they say yes and it doesn't work. That's what they're thinking about. If I say yes to this and it doesn't work, how will that make me feel? Will it make me feel dumb? Will it make me feel stupid? Will I, like, that's what they're thinking about. What if this doesn't work? And so they're imagining the worst case scenario. They're scared. And so what do the best salespeople do? They flip the script. Instead of talking only about what the buyer will gain, they help the buyer to see what they'll lose by not buying. What's the cost of staying stuck? What opportunities are slipping away right now? What is the price of doing nothing? When you make the cost of inaction feel immediate, the fear of buying goes way down and the fear of not buying goes way up. And so the takeaway here is add in some cost of inaction language to your pitch. Ask your buyer, what happens if this problem is still here in 6 months from now? What happens? And then let them feel the weight of doing nothing. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is people decide emotionally and then they justify it with logic, not the other way around. They decide emotionally and then they justify it with logic. Every buyer who's ever asked for more data has already made up their mind. They're asking for more data, but they've already made up their mind. They just need permission to say yes. I know someone who is in software sales, and she got to the end of a software demo of her product, and the prospect said, "Can you send me a breakdown of all the features?" And so she spent 2 hours building out this detailed spreadsheet of all the features. And then she sent it over to him. And guess what she got? Crickets, silence, nothing. And 2 weeks later, that deal was dead. So here's what actually happened. The prospect had already made their decision emotionally. And they were on the fence logically, but they've already made their decision emotionally. And they asked for more data, not because they needed it. They asked for more data because they were not emotionally convinced yet. And here's the thing. If they're not emotionally convinced yet, more information does not fix that. Connection does. Connection fixes that. And so the brain makes decisions in 2 parts. The emotional brain decides first. The emotional brain is fast, it's instinctive, it decides right away. The logical brain comes in second. The logical brain comes in after to explain and to justify what the emotional brain already chose. That's why stories are more powerful than statistics. That's why a testimonial from someone who looks like your buyer converts way better than a case study full of numbers. And your job is to win the emotional yes first. Then give them the logic that they need to justify everything to themselves and to whoever else they need to convince. And so the takeaway is lead with stories and emotions, and then close with data and logic. Never lead with features and benefits. Lead with the moment that your buyer can feel. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is this. You have to know that when people feel like they're being sold to, they shut down. But when they feel understood, they open up. You see, the moment your buyer senses that you're trying to sell them something or convince them of something, your chances of closing drops by half. And so here's what you do instead. There's a concept in psychology called reactance. And reactance is the feeling that you get when someone tries to push something on you. When somebody tries to push you into a decision. you get this, what psychology calls reactance. And your brain automatically pushes back. When someone tries to push something on you, you automatically push back. Think about the last time that a pushy salesperson tried to pressure you into buying something. What did you do? You didn't buy it. You might have even wanted the thing that they were trying to give you. You might have even needed the thing that they were trying to sell you. But the pressure made you say no. Just because of the pressure. You said, no, I don't want it. And you know you need it. But you was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Because of that pressure. The buyers that you deal with, they feel the same way. And so the top 1% of salespeople, they have figured this out. They don't sell. Well, if they don't sell, then what do? They guide. They ask questions. They listen. They reflect back what they heard. They say things like, it sounds like your biggest issue right now is X. Is that right? And so when you do that, when a buyer feels understood, something amazing happens. Their guard comes down and their brain stops looking for reasons to say no. And then they start selling themselves. And that's the most powerful close in the world, when the buyer convinces themselves. Because you can't convince them. They have to convince themselves. The only thing you can do is guide them into convincing themselves. The only thing you can do is present the information and ask the right questions in order for them to connect the dots in their own brain to convince themselves that they need what you have. And so you do this by asking great questions and then getting quiet. Ask the question and then zip it. Let them sit, let the silence work for you. Because if you let the silence work for you, the buyer will fill that space. And you'll learn more in a quiet moment than in 10 minutes of you pitching. And so the takeaway is, in your next sales call, try this. After you ask a question, say nothing. And count to 5 in your head. And by that time, most buyers will fill that silence before you can get to 5. And they're going to fill that with the exact information that you need to close them. And so here's the last thing that I want to talk about. Urgency is not about deadlines. Urgency is about helping buyers feel the cost of delay right now. You see, a lot of people, salespeople, are getting urgency wrong. They're doing something that's like fake urgency. And fake urgency destroys trust. Real urgency closes deals. And there's a way to create the real urgency that feels completely natural. See, a lot of salespeople, they try to create urgency by making up deadlines. And your buyer knows that deadline is bogus. They know that. You say things like, oh, this price is only good until Friday. We only have two spots left. And sometimes that is true. But oftentimes it's not. And they can feel the difference. And so stay away from fake urgency, because fake urgency makes your buyer distrust you. But real urgency, on the other hand, is one of the most powerful forces in sales. Real urgency comes from helping your buyer to connect with the actual cost of waiting. Every day that they don't solve their problem is a day that they're losing something. They're losing money. They're losing time. They're losing customers. They're losing peace of mind. And your job is to make them feel that loss and make them feel like it's real and it's present right here, right now. Not someday, today. Ask questions like, how long have you been dealing with this problem? And then say, so in the last 12 months, how much do you think that this problem has cost you? And then let them do the math. And that number that they say, the one they just said out loud, that's your real urgency. Whatever they said, that's your real urgency. And you didn't have to make it up. They calculated it themselves. Now the conversation shifts from, should I buy this, to how quickly can we get started? And so what I want you to take away is, you have to replace the fake deadlines with real cost calculations. Help your buyer to quantify the price of delay in their own way, because that creates an urgency that's honest, it's powerful, and it's impossible to argue with, because they can't argue with something that they came up with themselves. And so here's what we covered in this video. People don't buy on logic. They buy on emotion, and then they justify it with logic. The fear of loss is twice as powerful as the desire to gain. And buyers shut down when they feel they're being sold to, but they open up when they feel understood. And urgency only works when it's real. And so sales psychology is not about manipulating people. It's about understanding how people actually think and then meeting them where they are. When you do that, selling stops feeling like pushing and it starts feeling like helping. Now, here's what I want you to do. Take one thing from this video, just one, and try it in your next sales conversation. Maybe it's asking the cost of inaction questions. Maybe it's getting comfortable with silence. Maybe it's leading with a story instead of a features list. Pick one, try it, and come back and tell me in the comments what happened. And if you want to go deeper on this, I have a free community where myself and other entrepreneurs discuss topics like these in much more detail. It's called the Millionaire Makers Network. And if you want to check it out, the link is in the description.